delighted to welcome CEO of Front, Dan O'Connell.
Hey everybody, it's a tough act to follow. I just welcomed, I got choked up just hearing that from Dave. We just welcomed our first daughter 8 weeks ago. And so I think his words about just connecting with people and prioritizing what matters is just a really true statement. He was also kind enough telling me wear my skinniest jeans and a hoodie to stay warm in this mountain air. And just to go off script for a moment too of what he was talking about before I dive into things, I think we really are at this really, really unique moment when we talk about customer success and client services, really for 3 reasons. Number one is we all know that I think outbound and driving new business is probably harder than ever. I look at our own business, a $100 million business, 10,000 customers. I rely on our ability to go and grow our existing customer base. I'll get into how this is increasingly the place that I think CEOs are going to focus for how do we go compound and grow revenue. 2 is I think you also sit in a place where many of your own businesses are probably thinking about disrupting yourselves internally with new features. As you build out those new features, some of them are going to have pricing changes. They're not going to be based on seat-based pricing. You're probably talking about run rate revenue. The first place your CEO is going to look is your existing base. And so all of you sit in that position today of, I think, strategic power may not be the best way to say it, but you sit in a place of massive leverage to be the change agent within your business. And I would encourage you to think about that. The whole intent of my presentation for the next 25 minutes is to help you elevate the narrative around how can you be seen as the strategic arm within your business if you're not already. So I'll go through some practical advice around that and hopefully leave probably 10 minutes for questions. I think we've got a really small, intimate conference here, which I love. Let me go through my prepared remarks, but I love getting questions. I think that's where things get really interesting. So hopping into things, a little bit of background just to myself, as people are probably like, who is this guy? Why should I listen to him? I started my career in customer success and account management at Google back in 2002. Google was a couple hundred people when I joined. It was 70,000 people when I left. I've seen the impact of customer success, client services as a CRO. A CRO of a business called Dialpad. I was their CRO from 25 million to about 300 million, and I've been really fortunate to be a multi-time CEO. And so, again, when I look at every business that I've been part of, as that business has grown, the strategic lever has always become, how do we grow our customer base? How do we get more from them? And how do we start to shift this? To no surprise, I think as you get within these businesses that start to scale, you'll see a shift away from net new logo acquisition and from the sales organization and an increasing focus of where you all sit today within customer support, customer success, client services, however you want to frame it. 60% of our own revenue up front is coming from our install base. As I said, a little bit of background on Front, $100 million business, 10,000 customers today. We intently focus on how do we get more from our existing base. Just this past year, we rolled out add-ons, so I care a lot about add-on adoption and driving revenue from that. Before we hop into things a little bit further, I'm just curious on like a raise of hands. How many folks within your business today think your customer success is viewed as a cost center? Okay, a couple of hands go up. If I shift that, how many think or believe that let's just say your CEO views your customer success team as a growth lever? Okay. Not everybody, but vast majority. Great. So for those of you that have the hands up, as I said, hopefully this will help shift that narrative. For those of you that put them up for the revenue growth, hopefully you'll learn some new things. If there's one slide to pay attention to, it's going to be this slide for these 5 things. Number 1, your job is to make sure that you stop talking just about customer renewals and you really start focusing on how to drive expansion. That means expansion, whether it's seat-based, whether it's add-ons, whether it's changing the run rate within your business, again, away from SaaS pricing to perhaps run rate pricing as you may introduce new features. I'll hop into all these things to provide some specific examples. I think 2 is the best leaders are translating this customer signals into revenue, meaning you stop talking about health scores and CSAT, and you start talking about how adoption actually leads into revenue. Something that drives me nuts in our forecast call is anytime if I hear somebody say adoption is down 10%, the board, the CEO, all of the executives in the room are talking about ARR and revenue. Put that in a revenue number for me. What does that usage drop turn into in terms of actual dollars? I think the best leaders also influence outside of CS. To me, you're the voice of the customer. You should be telling the voice of the customer in that narrative internally. Don't rely on product analytics to tell that story. I joke, sure as heck, I would not rely on product to tell the story. I haven't seen a product team that is as close to the customer as the customer success team. And so own that narrative. Be the people that are the ones that are talking about the roadmap. As I mentioned that, how many people, I guess, show of hands, how many folks are in I imagine you go through quarterly planning for your EPD organization, engineering product design. How many people are involved in that meeting? Okay, so only about half of the folks. That's crazy to me as a CEO. I very much, I will not let our EPD org have that conversation without sales in that room or without the leaders within customer success. Because if you're assuming that your product teams are close to the customer, they're probably not on as many calls, and they might be making guesses on what to build just based on intuition. I think they balance leading and lagging metrics. Folks, I know when I first started in my career, I spent a lot of time talking about CSAT and health scores, and I wasn't so focused on utilization and adoption, which are really the leading indicators. Even something like exec alignment, I think is really important to understand. And then last but not least, I think the best leaders, they're earning executive trust with clarity and conviction, meaning they are there. I trust our leaders. I want our leaders to be able to go and tell me the good news and the bad news. I really want leaders that are that are being proactive with their business. I talk about it internally up front as playing offense within their business. You're not gonna spook me with a hard conversation. You're gonna spook me if I don't think you're on top of it, right? If you're not understanding the client needs, if you're not on top of the churn or contraction, whatever it might be, those are the things that actually don't build trust. They actually spook me. So hopping into things, these 5 things, again, with some specific details. Number 1, make CS the growth engine. You have to focus on not just protecting the renewals, it's really about shifting that into expansion. I constantly want to know, what are we doing on add-ons? What are the other plays that might be playing out? Some other plays for expansion might be shifting, if you're on monthly contracts, shifting from monthly to annual. If you're on annual contracts, shifting that from just 1 year to perhaps multi-year. When I first joined Front 18 months ago as the CEO, we had signed a lot of annual contracts. One of the biggest plays that we had, and we're pushing on the CS team, was actually to shift that. We're at a critical moment in time where I think every business is looking at the platforms that they have installed and are doubling down on the ones that they believe have a vision for what the future looks like, and they're going away from the ones that they don't. So again, I think you're at a really strategic, important moment in time to be thinking about how do you get people to opt in for multi-year deals and picking your platform. That might be the play that you decide to opt for. It's really tough. I've seen also CS leaders struggle with a little bit of analysis paralysis, which I can go through all of these different plays. Focus on an add-on. Shift away from monthly contracts to annual contracts. Once you've got me annual contracts, can you make it multi-year? I think it's really hard to do 6 different things. So I'd really encourage you to think about what are 1 or 2 plays that you can do. Start to execute against that. Be really clear with the sales organization of who is going to own what. Different organizations do different things in different ways. I don't think there's any perfect structure. Sometimes sales owns renewal. Sometimes it's CS. Sometimes sales owns expansion. Be really clear with your partner in the sales organization as to who owns what. I also think the best leaders focus on this flywheel of CS, which is your job is to drive adoption. When somebody first signs a deal, you want to focus on the onboarding. You want to get them to have high utilization. That high utilization means they're seeing value. That value leads into expansion. That expansion will lead into advocacy. That advocacy, what I mean is somebody's more likely to recommend you versus some other competition, Or if they leave jobs, they're going to bring you with them. And so again, the best leaders understand this flywheel effect that CS has. So some practical advice, as I talked to a little bit about these already, map these top 3 plays, and then I would say like the bottom one. Focus on trying to do 1 or 2 things. Don't worry about 6 different plays that you're trying to go and execute against. Do that one thing really, really well. I think number 2, translate customer signals into revenue terms. Metrics only matter to me, and I think the board, and even just the executive, the C-suite, when they're in terms of dollars. And so what I mean by that is don't just talk about utilization, don't just talk about usage dropping, but actually tie that to a dollar value. If somebody's utilization drops by 10%, what does that equate to in a potential loss or contraction in revenue terms? That is how we all talk, and you've got to have that same common language across the business. Number 2 is I think it's like you need to focus on adoption signals as renewal probability. What I mean by that is someone has high utilization, high usage, you probably have a higher likelihood that they're going to go and renew that contract. The opposite is also true. If usage trends start to drop, if you're focused on utilization, whether it's on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, depending on how whatever piece of software you're working, you want to understand how that turns into a loss in dollars in terms of contraction and churn. What's the actual dollar amount that's at risk? Every insight should be in terms of like a pipeline impact. In terms of forecasting, I'm curious, how many folks here, raise of hands, we'll do a lot of audience participation. How many folks have a weekly forecast call? Okay, only about half. What about every 2 weeks? Monthly? Okay, a few folks monthly. I would really, really, really encourage you to think about weekly conversations. It's a big undertaking for an organization. I think it keeps customers top of mind. It keeps churn, contraction, utilization, adoption top of mind. Something we do up front, it's the one meeting, doesn't matter who's late. Occasionally I will be late to a meeting. We start on time, we have that forecast call. Doesn't matter if I'm on vacation, we have it. And I would really ingrain that in an organization, encourage you to think about that as shift away from a bi-weekly call or a monthly call. Force this conversation. You'll have way better conversations. You'll be way more on top of the business, and it forces accountability and credibility. In terms of like some practical advice, we spoke a little bit about this, so I'll keep going on this. The third thing is like influence beyond CS. And what I mean by that is you have to be the voice of the customer within your company and organization. We have a really big product analytics team at Front, but I know that product analytics team is focused on the utilization and adoption trends. They're not out there actually talking to the customers. That's not their job. You have to be the one that is elevating the customer voice. You have to be the one that is getting your teams to think about the product roadmap. I think when businesses, some of you are probably parts of scale-ups, some of you are probably in seed businesses. I've done a 0 to 1 journey. When we were building that, it was very much we were focused on what engineering and product wanted to deliver. It was not about what the customers always wanted. There is a shift that happens within an organization as you scale, where you go away from being an engineering and product-led business and you become a go-to-market-led business. As you continue to scale, that means that you're becoming a customer success-led business. You're going based on what the customers need, the opportunities, again, because that is how the business is going to go and compound. There's so much revenue at stake. I think you also need to think about how to engage with finance. How many of you are part of your annual business planning? Okay, see, vast majority, that's great. Understanding the business terms, I think, is something that also gets missed is for people that are early on in their career or the first time in executives. Not all customers are good customers. And what I mean by that is some of them have bad margins. Sometimes you have folks across the aisle from you on sales. They close a deal, they discount it down, you get handed off to it. Colin, who's going to come up from Zendesk, he worked in PE. He probably has in the past, even today, he will probably say the same thing. Is not all the customers are good customers. You have to pay attention to the gross margins. You have to be fluent in the business metrics to be really successful as an executive and to continue to grow in your career. And I would just encourage you to think about that. Understand the underlying business metrics of your business. It will provide so much credibility for yourself as you continue to grow. The last piece on being part of the model is it's also important because I think it's really easy. Sasha, who's coming up from Canva, was watching a YouTube video yesterday on where she was talking about this. It's really easy for people to understand if you add sales heads what the revenue is coming. It can be difficult if you're not talking about the finance, if you're not talking about pipeline and expansion opportunities and growth that comes from CS. If you can't say, if you give me these heads, here's what I'm going to go get for you. And so again, you have to be part of that conversation with the finance team. You should be just as hungry for heads as the CRO is. Right? If I get 5 more CSMs, here's what I can go and do with it. Here's the expansion that I can go and get. Here's the revenue growth that comes from it. So some practical advice. Meet monthly with your product teams. How many people meet monthly with their product team? Okay, just about half. Partner with sales to align on expansion playbooks. Again, clear clarity of who owns what. And then again, sitting with finance. That sitting with finance, especially if you have a go-to-market focused CFO, they'll help educate you on what is it like to run a business. How do they think about lifetime value? This is also something that you should be thinking about. What is the lifetime value of the customer that you have? Do we have good margins from them? Do I think this is a good business that can grow with us? If you understand that, you're going to react differently to your customer base, which is then going to impact the structure that you want. It's going to impact the playbook that you want to go and do. It's going to impact the type of hiring and the profile that you want to go and get. Fourth is like balancing leading and lagging metrics. Early in my career, as I mentioned, I focused a lot on CSAT, even NRR. Both those metrics, I would say, are a little bit of reporting the weather. You know that it's raining outside. It's a lagging indicator. Shifting and thinking about utilization and adoption, right? Even tracking, do we have exec alignment? Friday, I was talking with a business. We had sent out a webinar. We've got a product announcement in a couple of weeks. Sent out a webinar blast. CEO replied back and wanted to chat. That single conversation I had with them on Friday, I can tell you, they will not churn. They will never churn. Almost lifetime customer with Front. There are other large businesses that we have. Some of our large accounts, we don't have strong exec alignment. One of the biggest things that terrifies me is that. If you don't have exec alignment, I would actually argue that's probably one of the biggest indicators of whether somebody is going to stay with you or not. Again, especially as we're in this moment of, I think, massive transformation of people picking new platforms or doubling down on existing platforms. So encouraging people to think through, focus on the utilization, understand adoption, even starting to track exec alignment across your top accounts. Those are the leading indicators that are going to tell you whether it's raining outside or whether it's super sunny and nice out. Doesn't mean that you should ignore the lagging ones. CSAT, health score, NRR, I love all those metrics. But there's not a lot that I can do in the moment to save things. Those are all things that have happened. When you think about, the key practical advice I would say here is just when you think about some of the dashboards that you have today, put these metrics side by side. One of our dashboards, literally there's 5 columns. It's got NRR, NDR, same thing. It's got CSAT. It's got utilization. We track utilization in terms of like number of seats that they bought, how many are deployed. We track usage. We do usage on a weekly basis, just given the platform that we use. And the last one is actually the exec alignment, which is like going down the list. Do we actually have exec alignment there? Do we have relationships that we can go to, whether it's to test out new features or just to know that they view us as a strategic partner as they continue to grow? But again, get away from having too many metrics. I think those are the key kind of 5 things to focus on. Put them side by side. And then lastly, earn executive trust with clarity and conviction. I think like the key piece of this is you have to be willing to report the weather. You've got to be proactive in the approach, and you got to tackle the hard news first and not hide it and not sugarcoat it. I have to do this all the time. As I said, fortunately, I've been able to run multiple businesses. One thing I do with just our board members is I send them a monthly note, good or bad. Building businesses is really hard. There's always going to be storms that show up. You got to be willing to have those conversations, and what people want to know is that you're on top of it, you understand it, you see it, and that you have a plan of action that you're taking. The only time I ever get frustrated is if somebody doesn't have a plan of action. And so I would just encourage you to think about that. If your CEO or your boss is coming to you with a plan, you don't get to complain about the plan. They just did their job. They just did your job for you. And so just think about that. Communicate the plan. Communicate the hard aspect for it. It will give you so much trust. Something that one of the things that I would encourage people to do is like send out a monthly letter. The reason I paused there, we have a couple engineers on our team, engineering managers, that send out weekly notes. And I think those weekly notes of what their teams are working on are immensely impactful in shaping their internal perspective. I get CC'd on a lot of these notes. I read them. It helps me understand. One, provides reassurance to me, lets me know that that team's thinking about hiring. A lot of times there's commentary about AI, there's commentary about the product that they're building, but it completely shifts like how I think about that person. And I think this is one of those things that's like really easy to say, oh, I can go send a monthly email out, and nobody does it. How many people send a monthly email out to their CEO? Very few people. How many people send it to their direct manager? Okay, not that many people. These are like the little things, like going to the gym. It sounds really easy. It's really hard to put into practice. You'd be shocked at how beneficial it is just to do those one things. Even a Loom, our chief product officer, sends out a weekly Loom. I was encouraging him of like, he's been new to the business, came into the business 4 months ago. And I was like, this is a great way for people to get to know you, your personality, too, to help people understand like what you're thinking about building. It's been amazing to see the reactions and comments just on those things. And so this is like one of those simple practices that I think has like such immense upside impact, almost no downside, that I would encourage everyone to do it. And then lastly, like rehearse exec board updates. Something we do at every all hands is we talk about a customer renewal, an expansion, and a new logo win. We also do that as the way we start every board meeting. And so again, these are like nice practices where all of you sit. How do you bring your story and your narrative closer to all of the other teams, all of the other people that are involved in the business? Really simple stuff to do that I think just elevates the conversations. At the end of the day, I look for these 4 things within the leaders. Simplicity, meaning, can you cut through the noise? There's 9,000 metrics to track. The one that matters is like revenue, right? Can you understand the leading indicators of that or the leading risks? Relevance, can you tie this back to revenue, right? What you were doing, the work that you're actually acting. Proactivity, play offense with your business. I don't know a better way to say it, but those are the things. Think about the challenges, think about the opportunities. What are the asks that you need? Do you want to change structure? Do you need to go through a reorg? And then the last is influence. I truly, like when I started this talk, like truly believe that like CS is probably the most strategic arm of any organization as they scale. I think it has not always felt like that. And I think we are in this really unique moment in time where it's harder to find net new logo growth. So CEOs are going to go and look at the existing base. You've got a disruption of AI, people picking new platforms. You want to make sure that your customers are going to double down on you. And then the third is you likely have new products that are being built that perhaps are even shifting how your business thinks about pricing. And people at your product and engineering team are going to say it's way easier to go and sell that to the existing base than it is trying to find somebody out there on the streets that wants to buy it. So these are all things that I can tell you are top of mind within a boardroom, within your CEO's head, whether they've communicated it or not. So just as I wrap, 3 things you can do tomorrow. Translate one metric into dollars. As I said, don't just talk about CSAT. Don't just talk about usage being down. Tie this into actually dollar impact. Draft a 1-page memo, send it out, or a Loom. You'd be shocked if you just did that, what will happen. It makes your day when people reply back. And then meet with sales or product. Sounds really easy, but again, you can see from the hands, like these are just these, I see basic things that just, they get lost. We get lost within our days that you can go and do. And so I think if you go act on those things, at the end of the day, like this is how we can redefine CS as a massive growth lever within the business. And as I said, it's like this critical moment in time where I think there's a massive opportunity to elevate this. We got 3 minutes if there's any barn burner question. I know we got like a tight agenda, so anyone want to be brave? Yeah, you might need to yell too. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so his question was, speaking about utilization, how do we track it? I'll follow up. I don't know the specific. We use Omni as the platform, but I don't know. That's like the dashboarding software that we use. I don't know the specific tool. I'll ping our team and share it out in like a blast email. We track utilization, what I would just expand on. We track utilization across different features. So for us as Front, we're a help desk ticketing platform, also shared inbox. So if somebody's not using our platform every day, I get really worried. It's like your email provider. If you don't log into Gmail and you've like bought Gmail for your communications, I would be like really nervous. So there's also, you got to think about utilization for different features. Like what does that mean as a leading indicator? But I can follow up on like which is the specific software that we use to go and do that. Yeah, one more.
As a leader, what are you looking for from your CS teams related to AI, efficiency, and I think you can translate revenue or
Yeah, so your question was, what am I looking for in terms of AI, in terms of like tools they should be using, or? Yeah, so much like every CEO, I feel like the CEO on like LinkedIn now, where everyone will go and say like your CEO is just yelling at you to like go and use AI, but don't know where. The one big thing like we have focused on that I think has actually provided utility is customer feedback. And so we use Gong as a call recording. We put that through an LLM to go and actually classify. LLMs are great for categorization and classification. Allows us to go and do that at scale. We do this across email. As I said, we do emails. That's been honestly probably one of the more impactful areas that we have leveraged AI tooling. It's like instant categorization and classification of either positive things that we've launched, like how we launched a lot of new features and people are responding positively to it, or negatively. You get the call recording, we can then go and propagate that and share that across engineering and product because, again, it's tough for those folks to hop on as many calls as we would like. That's a way that we can get them to hear in the customer's words as opposed to playing a game of telephone. Yeah, great question. All right, 15 seconds. Thank you for your time. I'm around. I would love to connect with people. That's why I came here. I'm a total open book on our business and just approach for things. So I'm happy to chat. And if I can be helpful, that's why I'm here. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.